James Peoples is a talented running back with a bright future, but earning Ohio State's starting job won't be easy.
You are Locked On Buckeyes, your daily podcast on the Ohio State Buckeyes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in, Buckeye fans, to your Thursday edition of Locked On Buckeyes, which is your daily Ohio State podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Jay Stevens, also the host of the Jay Stevens Podcast, and today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. During today's show, we'll discuss what's missing from Ohio State's RB room, as well as the impact of a two-back system in 2025. But first, James Peoples is a talented running back with a bright future, but earning Ohio State's starting job won't be easy. It is not supposed to be easy, especially when there's a newcomer to the RB room that entered the portal in the winter. Carlos Lachlan went out and searched all across the country to find somebody to join Ohio State's running back room in 2025. That was C.J. Donaldson. He had back-to-back 700 rushing yard seasons for the West Virginia Mountaineers. He is a talented running back. I believe he's not only coming in to be in the rotation at Ohio State next year, I also believe he is good enough to be Ohio State starting running back in 2025. And for James Peoples, he's talented. He has a bright future, but he knows earning Ohio State's starting job won't be easy. And moving forward for these two guys specifically, I hope everybody looks at them and says, either one of them can start. One has more experience. One is fresher. It doesn't matter. Either one of them can start in 2025. And what we saw in 2024 was, I think, something that Lachlan is going to do moving forward. Kind of do a back and forth with who starts at running back. Sometimes it was Trevian Henderson. Sometimes it was Quinshon Judkins. It depended on the opponent at times. Sometimes Trevian Henderson can be better off the bench against certain opponents than Quinshon Judkins could. It didn't matter. It was a back and forth of those two guys. And at first I was like, oh, one guy's going to start every game. And then I saw Quinshon Judkins starting sometimes. I saw Trevian Henderson. And it made me open my eyes to what Carlos Lachlan is doing with that room. He's helping everybody be the best they can be, to be as fresh as they can be. And maybe for certain opponents, you got to change things up. And there may be times in the football season in the fall where Donaldson starts. There could be times where James Peoples starts. We're not sure what's going to happen, but that's the reality. And I trust Carlos Lachlan. I think you should too. Put your trust in Lachlan and say whatever Lachlan thinks is right, along with whoever the OC is at Ohio State, and Brian Hartline, who at worst is going to be the co-OC and wide receivers coach, along with Ryan Day. With all those guys putting their minds together, they're going to figure out the right formula. May it be three running backs playing in a rotation in a single game. I'm not sure. But whatever they decide to do, I believe everyone right now could put their trust in those coaches to make the right decision. But back to James Peoples. James Peoples right now was in a very interesting spot. He has a massive opportunity in front of him to be able to start in year two, to be able to start on a team that's trying to run it back in 2025, that has an opportunity, a realistic one, to run it back in 2025. And he could come in, and if he takes massive steps forward and he raises his game, and he's already physically fit to play running back in college football, like he looks the part. But one thing that I think set Judkins and Henderson apart from everybody else in that room, aside from their ability to run the ball and just be great running backs when the ball's in their hands, is their ability to pass block. And as you and I and other people scroll on Twitter or Blue Sky or any of these social media apps out there, you'll look out and you'll see videos, you'll see tweets about people that are talking to NFL scouts, or they're hearing stuff from NFL scouts discussing that Henderson and Judkins' ability to pass block is going to help them raise their draft stock and move up draft boards, because 9 times out of 10, your really good running backs in college football aren't as elite in pass pro as those two guys are. And for James Peoples, you were able to learn from 2 really good running backs. Henderson had 2 1,000-yard rushing seasons at Ohio State. Quinshon Judkins had 3 in a row in his 3 years playing college football. He had a 1,500 rushing yard season, I think a 1,200 rushing yard season, and he had 1,000 yards at Ohio State while splitting time with Trevian Henderson, which I think does not need to get glossed over for Judkins. The fact that he had 1,000 yards and he had half the amount of carries that he had previously. The ability to get that production along with someone else who's getting that same production, NFL teams see that, and you're going to raise your draft stock. But Peoples was able to learn from these two guys for a full season and look at them, the day to day. How do they take care of their body? What are they doing pregame? How do they recover? What are they using to fuel themselves? What fluids are they putting into their body? How do they carry themselves on game day? What do they do in the film room? All of these questions are things that James Peoples was able to learn from, and all he had to do was be a sponge, just soak everything in, while also going out on the practice field and realizing, I got to put the work in too. I can't just sit here and watch these guys put the work in. I can't watch Henderson and Juckins and Carlos Lachlan do the starting stuff and just say, oh, I got to take a back seat. I don't have to pay attention. No, he had to put the work in too, and he had to pay attention because if one of those two guys went down and could not play a significant part of, let's say, a big game or an average game, James Peoples was next. And you don't want to be that guy who's the third running back in a room that rarely gets to play, that all of a sudden you realize I'm thrust out there on Front Street and I got to play in a big moment and not be prepared. We saw Devin Brown against Michigan State. He came in, I believe it was one play, a touchdown. He was getting rushed. A man was right in his face. He had to throw the ball a whole lot quicker than he wanted to. Next thing you know, threw the ball to Jeremiah Smith, and he made a miraculous one-handed catch. But Devin Brown came in, and he was ready. It's the same thing for James Peoples. He didn't have to do it last year, but in that time period, he had to prepare. He had to get his mind right for the moment because he didn't know if or when his number would be called. And if it was called or when it was called, he had to step up and do everything he could to get the job done. Peoples and Donaldson, this is going to be a running back competition that'll be more intense than Ohio State's quarterback competition that they're going to have this offseason. Because I believe these two running backs have the goods. We know what Donaldson is as a running back. I can't wait to see what Mickey Mariotti does in the offseason with CJ Donaldson's body and gets him more mature, gets his mind right, gets more prepared for the upcoming season with Peoples. Same thing. They're competing every single day with each other. Yeah, they're competing with the other players on the team, but they're competing with each other. Peoples versus Donaldson in various lifts. Peoples versus Donaldson in various races. Peoples versus Donaldson in a pass pro drill. Why? Because these two guys are neck and neck. These two guys are very, very close, and it wouldn't shock me if Peoples starts at Ohio State or if Donaldson starts at Ohio State. It wouldn't shock me at all. But Peoples realizes, I have been here longer. I know these coaches better. I also know what they expect, but he has to raise his level of play. Donaldson does too. I can't knock him out of this either. He has to raise his level of play too. But these two guys in particular, this is going to be a fun battle to watch in the offseason. And it wouldn't shock me if in the fall we get a scenario where Lachlan's like, cool, Peoples, you start here. Donaldson, you start here. Or it wouldn't shock me if he says, no, one of you starts every single game. Because I think that might be the key for people to have in his mind. Don't think about backup or starting. Think about just doing what's needed to earn the job. Earn that title of RB1. He saw what it took from running backs last year that did a great job for Ohio State. He saw what it took from Will Howard to earn that title of QB1 in Columbus, Ohio. He can learn from those guys, and he can realize, I can do what's needed of me to be Ohio State starting running back in his second year at Ohio State. Now, there is a reality that there will probably be a two-back system for Ohio State in the fall. And that reality is a big one, and I believe there's a massive impact of Ohio State using two running backs when the season starts in the fall. This episode is brought to you by Game Time. Looking for tickets to your next big event? Whether it's a concert, a comedy show, or a sports game, finding the right ticket at the right price can be a headache. But with Game Time Picks, it's never been easier. Let me tell you how it works. With Game Time Picks, the app does all the hard work for you. It curates the best deals, so you don't have to waste time searching through endless ticket listings. I've been using Game Time Picks for a while now, and here's why I love it. The curated deals make it super simple to find great tickets at a great price. I recently grabbed a super deal for a prime seat, and I couldn't believe the value. The seat view feature is a game changer. Before I even hit buy, I can see exactly what my seat will look like in the venue. It's so reassuring. Ready to make your next event even better? Download the Game Time app, create an account and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply again. That's code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Thank you for tapping in Locked on Buckeyes and making this show your first listen of the day. One thing we saw Carlos Loughlin and Ryan Day do in 2024, we can't forget Chip Kelly, was use the two running backs in a great way. Sometimes they split carries. Sometimes one guy had a few more carries than the other. But for the most part, they figured out a formula to keep both guys fresh for every game that Ohio State played this year. And while doing so, you realized the ground game was decent, was pretty good. There wasn't a massive let off or a massive dip, and what neither guy got disgruntled or became a cancer in the locker room. They figured out how to use these two running backs, and they used them so well that at the end of the day, they were as fresh as can be in the national championship. You saw that with Henderson's 75-yard screen pass touchdown against Texas. You saw that with Quinshon Judkins on his long run against Notre Dame. He had a hat trick in the Natty. I mean, those two guys were super, super fresh. When we look at their carries, you saw that they may have realized at times we can give a little bit more carries to Quinshon Judkins over Trevian Henderson, but it wasn't a problem. They figured out a formula, and that thing worked. Quinshon Judkins this year had 194 carries and 1,060 rushing yards and 14 rushing touchdowns. Trevian Henderson, 144 carries, 1,016 rushing yards, and 10 touchdowns. There's a number I didn't state that I think speaks volumes about these two guys. Trevian Henderson averaged 7.1 yards a pop. Quinshon Judkins averaged 5.5 yards a pop. If you were to come in and talk about these two guys and saying they're both going to be in the rotation, would you think both guys would average 5.5 yards a pop, and the one guy that had the most yards per carry is Henderson and he had 7.1? Probably not. That's unheard of. It's insane. But that's what happened this year. And I think when it comes to Donaldson and Peoples, one, you got to realize they're not the same. It's not the same combination as Henderson and Judkins. One, Judkins and Henderson had a lot more experience. They already had a 1,000-yard rushing season under their belt. Peoples is very, very green. Donaldson is not. So the comparison between the two, comparing these two running backs with last year's, you can't do that. But what you can do is realize that Loughlin is going to figure out a way with whoever the new OC is at Ohio State, along with Brian Hartline, to figure out a formula that works. And then roll with that thing every single day. It keeps your guys fresh. It keeps your guys motivated. It keeps your guys eager to do more. And it's also going to help your offense realize it doesn't matter who's back there. We have the guys behind us that can get the job done. Now, I've also thought in my head, could Ohio State use 3 running backs? While the other guys that are currently in the room are Bo Jackson, Isaiah West, Anthony Trobo Rogers. Those are the 3 incoming freshmen that Ohio State signed in the class of 2025. Could Ohio State use one of those 3 guys to have a 3 running back rotation? The answer is yes, it's possible, but I don't think it's likely. I don't think you're going to find Ohio State try to split carries between 3 guys. It's 2 guys. One guy might have more than the other, or it might be split evenly right down the middle. But I don't think you're going to try to put a 3rd guy in there and say, we're going to split this evenly between 3 guys. I don't think so at all. I don't think that would be wise. I don't think it would be smart. I do think there's a benefit, though, of having 3 running backs in rotation. This year didn't really make sense because of how good Judkins and Henderson are individually and then how great they were as a duo. But this year, I think there's a benefit for it, especially when you're working with an offensive line that's very, very experienced. Yeah, you're going to have 2 new tackles, Ethan Anamwa and I believe Philip Daniels. Daniels at right tackle and probably a Anamwa at left tackle. And then you have Luke Montgomery. This is my projected starting lineup. Luke Montgomery, a left guard, center Carson Hensman. And my gut saying it might be Austin Saraval at right guard. Not sure who Saraval or Shabola. I'm not sure which one will start, but it wouldn't shock me if Saraval was the guy to start at right guard in the fall. But when you have an experienced offensive line, and an offensive line that even in an odd formation in the Natty put up 215 rushing yards in the national championship against a really good rush defense of Notre Dame, that's going to give you a lot of confidence moving forward to change some stuff up, to be able to shake things up a little bit and try some different things. You can't really try different things in week number 1. You're going to try some different things as players on the field, and maybe a different offense, and I would be a massive proponent and someone that would be shouting from the rooftop, which might happen here on the show, for Ohio State to use 4 wide receivers. If you go out there against Texas, and we'll get back to the running backs here in a second, but if you go out there against Texas and you roll out there with Jeremiah Smith, Cardinal Tate, Brandon Ennis, and Bryson Rogers on play number 1, and it don't really matter who the running back is, those are your 4 receivers, and let's just say Peoples is just because he has been on the team longer. Think about what that's going to do to Texas. Because I've been saying Ohio State should be doing that for 3 or 4 years. I mean, it doesn't really make any sense why they don't. I understand Kate Stover and I understand Scott Jr. They could split out and be a tight end in the slot or a tight end just split out wide by themselves. I understand they have the capability, but let's just keep it real. Jeremy Rucker, too, a few years ago. Let's keep it real, though. If Ohio State this year rolled out with Brandon Ennis, Cardinal Tate, Emeka Buka, and Jeremiah Smith, who could stop them? Literally, like, seriously, who could stop that? Nobody had an answer for Jeremiah Smith unless you put 3 guys on him. And if you put 3 guys on him, what does that do? It opened up passing lanes for Cardinal Tate and Emeka Buka. And then imagine if you put Brandon Ennis out there with those 4 guys, especially when Ennis has another year in Columbus, another year under Heartline. He's getting his body right. He's maturing as a player, doing all the things right. Come on, man. It's almost a no-brainer. It's almost a no-brainer to make that thing happen. It was almost a no-brainer for Ohio State to use Judkins and Henderson the way that they did last year. And it's almost a no-brainer to use Peoples and Donaldson and to have them split carries in 2025. Some of this stuff it doesn't take rocket. It's not take a rocket scientist to figure this stuff out when Ohio State has the talent that they have on offense. And they're able to do the things that they are and be as creative as it could be. Why not just use every weapon in your bag? Just do it. If I'm a quarterback, I'm a dual threat quarterback. And I'm a starting quarterback on Ohio State. And I know I got these legs nobody can stop. Why wouldn't you use them? Oh, the coach might say, don't do that now or don't do it at all. We're trying to save that tool for a different day. Okay. You want to save that tool or save that weapon for a different day? Great. Cool. Okay, that's one thing. But in my mind, I think everybody should realize Ohio State has weapons nobody in the country has. Use them. Use the weapons you got and expose your opponent for not being able to handle your weapons. Texas is going to come into Ohio State and not just wanting to get back at Ohio State for Ohio State beating them in the Cotton Bowl, but also just want to start their season off with a W. Ohio State's going to be the same way. So you may see Ohio State use a few more weapons in that game than they would normally in a week 1 game because of who they're playing. Just do it. Don't overthink it. Don't think twice. Just do it. When it comes to these running backs, there's a massive benefit for a 2-back system. They might have to slow roll that thing a little bit because Donaldson has more experience, and I think if one guy right now should be the front runner to start, I think via experience and some of the stuff that's happened on film, I think Donaldson should be favored to start over Peoples. That's not to say Peoples won't start. But no matter who starts, figure out a way to use these 2 guys in a 2-back system and let that thing ride. One thing I don't want to move forward with is one thing missing from Ohio State's running back room right now, and I'll tell you what that is next. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. The big game is almost here, and there's no better way to make it even more exciting than with Prize Picks, the best place for daily fantasy sports. With over 10 million members and billions in winnings awarded, Prize Picks makes it fun and simple to get in on the action. Here's how it works. You pick more or less on at least 2 player projections, and if you're right, you can win up to 1,000 times your cash. Prize Picks even has a free pick for the big game where Patrick Mahomes only needs to throw 1 yard to win. Pair that with 1 more correct pick, and you're cashing out. This week, I'm looking at the board and selecting more for Travis Kelce on receiving yards and more for quarterbacks passing yardage. What I love most? Fast, safe withdrawals. When I win, my cash is in my account in as little as 15 minutes. Download the app and use code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONCollege for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. Run your game. Thank y'all for tapping in Locked on Buckeyes and making this show your first listen of the day. as I dive deeper into Ohio State's running back room, and earlier today I went on my phone and started to look closer into my projected depth chart to try to analyze walk on here, a guy who's the most experienced guy there. And there was one thing that was missing: two experienced running backs. And I think moving forward, as there's no one currently in the portal that I would say Ohio State needs to go out there and snag, when the portal opens in the spring, Carlos Lachlan needs to do what he did in the winter. Go find somebody that could provide an impact for your running back room. Now, when you go into the portal in the spring, you're probably not going to find somebody that's going to start, which is great. I believe Ohio State has two guys that can start in the fall: James Peoples or CJ Donaldson. I think Donaldson should be the front runner right now. Peoples will probably start down the road, but I think as it stands right now on February 6th, Donaldson should be the favorite to start at Ohio State. But you can go out there and get somebody that's experienced, as guys will have gone through winter workouts, they'll have gone through spring practice, they'll have the conversations with their position coaches and OCs and head coaches to realize where they stand in the depth chart and what's the likelihood of them moving forward in the upcoming season, being able to start, or what their role is, to decide if staying at their current school is the best thing for them, or maybe going somewhere else is the best thing for them. I think CJ Donaldson, if he would have stayed at West Virginia, I think he would have been a good back. I don't think it would have been bad. I also understand why he wanted to go to a bigger stage, be coached by Carlos Lachlan, and to do what he did by joining a new team. I understand that, especially when you've been one place for 3 seasons. I have no idea who's going to enter the portal in the spring. I don't. It wouldn't shock me if there's an Ohio State player or 2 or 5 they enter the portal in the spring. It wouldn't shock me at all, especially after you go through spring practice. There may be guys that are trying to start and believe they should start, that all of a sudden during spring practice they realize they're not in the front of the line. And by practice number 10, they realize they've never been at the front of the line. And actually, they've been back and forth between spot number 3 to spot number 5. And when you go 3, 4, and 5, and then back to 3, and then 4, and then back to 3, and then 5, now that jump may be a little drastic, but if guys are moving forward and backward, they're not one of the top 2 guys, let's just say the running back room, they might sit up here and say, oh, man, my role in this team is not what I thought it was going to be, and I need to go somewhere else to play football. Okay, that's the portal. It's right there for them to enter to go find a new place to play football. And I think Lachlan understands that bringing someone else in that's experienced, along with adding CJ Donaldson to the room this year, is going to be very, very beneficial to the growth and the maturity of the young running backs in that room. And I'm putting Peoples in that position as well, because Peoples, while he played 8 games last year, he is still very, very green. He's not a true novice because he played a little bit, but he didn't start. He has no starts under his belt. His playing time was limited because of who you're behind. And when you think about the incoming freshman and walk-on TC Coffee, who I don't normally talk about walk-ons on this show, but he is, I believe, the only walk-on running back that has scored a touchdown at Ohio State. When you think about those guys, they need someone to help lead them. And then when you think about game time, a Texas game, a Penn State, the team up north, whoever else is on Ohio State's schedule in the fall, don't have it right in front of me. They're going to need somebody that is experienced to kind of just boost and help Carlos Lachlan. But also, let's say you get in a pinch, and let's say that the injury bug does hit the RB room. Donaldson stays healthy. Let's say, unfortunately, somebody else goes down. Do you want to trust somebody that hasn't played at all to go out there and to tote the rock and to have to be out there and pass pro for a long period of time, or for somebody to play a whole lot more than they're used to with risking another injury? Now, you're playing football. Injuries may happen. We all know that. But if you can do certain things to help prevent injuries, go out there and do it. And I can't wait to see the crop of running backs that enter the portal in the spring, because I'm very curious to see what Carlos Lachlan does. Does he sit back and is he quiet, or does he try to add one more experienced running back to this room? Very similar to the quarterback room at Ohio State, the QB room and the RB room. They're both incomplete. They both need somebody else that is a little bit more experienced than them. And there's nothing wrong with that. And I think Ryan Day gets it. Ryan Day understands the infrastructure, the foundation that's been built at Ohio State. You kind of realize that not everybody is made to be an Ohio State Buckeye because it's such a high honor to play in Columbus, Ohio, in front of in the shoe, in front of 100,000 strong Buckeye fans yelling OHIO around the shoe all game long. And that sometimes people may think they have what it takes to play at Ohio State. But when it comes down to it, they don't have the goods. They don't have the mindset. They don't have the maturity to go out there and to be a part of this team. And that's going to help Lachlan try to figure out the guys that fit and the guys that don't. You can be patient, but also be real with them. Come in, create your relationship, and just be honest. Tell them where their spot is on the depth chart. Tell them what's most likely going to happen for them moving forward. Tell them what they can do to get more playing time. And be honest. You be honest. Let the young man know everything he needs to know. And then move forward. That is the best way to go. Get somebody that is another experienced running back. Make your running back room complete. And then moving forward, make sure that while you're doing that, you find the right guy. And do it quickly. When you find the right guy, don't waste any time. Do it quickly. Ryan Day, I did a show yesterday talking about Ryan Day not needing to rush to find Chip Kelly's replacement. He can take his time and try to find the right person to fill that role. And he did that with Justin Fry. Justin Fry left for the Arizona Cardinals. He took his time. He waited a little bit. He found the right person. There reports right now, at least when we're recording this show, that Ohio State, via multiple reports, is going to hire Virginia Tech offensive coordinator Tyler Bowen to replace Justin Fry as Ohio State's offensive line coach. Did Ryan Day move too fast? No. Does it make sense that a Virginia Tech OC would want to come to Ohio State and be an offensive line coach? Yeah, it does. You're coming to Ohio State. You're coming to Ohio State after winning a national championship, which already puts you in a prestigious class. You're going to be working with one of the three active coaches to have a national championship win in their resume. Mac Brown's gone. Bill Belichick has never won a college football national championship. And so when you think about that context, it does make sense. And I do think Ryan Day is going to utilize that to his advantage and do the same thing he does with players. Realize there may be some coaches that show interest that don't have what it takes to be here. While also there may be coaches that have what it takes to be here, and he may have to go a little bit slower to find the right guy to fill the role. And there's nothing wrong with that. I love what Ohio State's going to get out of TJ Donaldson and James Peoples. You got a bright future from both those guys, and both those guys are really, really talented. And while both of them are fighting to be Ohio State's RB1 in the fall, they got to earn it. And, buddy, earning it is not going to be easy. It's going to be tough. They're going to use a two-back system. I can't wait to see it. And this running back room is incomplete. I can't wait to see who Carlos Lachlan brings in during the spring portal window to make Ohio State's running back room as complete as it can be. Thank y'all for tapping into Locked On Buckeyes here on a Thursday and making this show your first listen of the day. For your second listen, check out the Locked On Big Ten podcast because my guy, Craig Sheeman, puts the Big Ten first when everyone else overlooks it. Find Locked On Big Ten on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. You can follow me on any social media platform at jstevens07. Send every email to jstevens317@gmail.com. This has been Locked On Buckeyes on a Thursday. We'll see you next time.